There are several things that make a project successful in the eye of the owner, but quality and professionalism top the list. Unfortunately, most project owners dread the thought of building a new project because it often leads to headaches either during construction or in through warranty issues. This is where hiring the right contractor becomes key to a project's success. There are a number of considerations when picking the right contractor, but quality and professionalism is always going to be the measure by which a project and its workers are ultimately evaluated. In this episode of OCS Talks, we look at what is being done by contractor associations to reinforce the quality and professionalism of their industry. Like everything, not all contractors or products are created equal. So what role do associations play in making sure the best quality of work is done by contractors that are part of an association?
Welcome to OCS Talks, your source for all things related to Ontario's unionized ICI construction sector.
I'm Brian Barron, CEO of the Ontario Construction Secretariat, and joining me today is Don Marks, Executive Director of the Ontario Industrial Roofing Contractors Association and a member of the OCS Board of Directors. Don, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, and anytime I have an opportunity to talk about roofing or our association, I'm always available.
Thank you. So, Don, to just give sort of a bit of background about us. So I've known you for, I think, about 10 years now. You and I have sat on numerous committees together over that time. And based on my experience, you really are a mainstay of the roofing world. But kind of more importantly, you're actually really heavily involved in the health and safety side of things, the labor relations side of that world. And my impression of you has always been someone who is genuinely interested in not only doing the right thing, but tackling big issues for the industry as a whole, but really in an effort to make it better in every way. So, what sparked today's discussion was a chat that you and I had probably about a little over a year ago at our State of the Industry and Outlook conference, where you walked me through how the Ontario Industrial Roofing Contractors Association assesses the contractors who they represent and the work they perform. And I want to get into that. But before we do, I want to know a little bit more. And I think for our listeners, who is it that your association represents? What type of projects do they work on? That kind of thing. Give us a bit of background as to what that looks like.
Okay. Our name is the Ontario Industrial Roofing Contractors Association. So the key word there is industrial. Our members are roofing contractors that are involved in the industrial, commercial, institutional sector of the industry, ICI, as we call it. So our members are installing roofs on any building that kind of falls into that classification, but they also get involved with multi-unit residential, so they could be putting roofs on condos or apartment buildings. Our members really don't get involved in the residential shingling sector, the single-family home, though we do have a handful of members across the province that have shingling divisions, but that's not really what we're all about. We're more ICI related. So what's important to realize about our members is that they're not just involved with new construction either. Re-roofing is a huge part of the type of work that our members do. And in some cases, with some of our members, the majority of the work that they do is re-roofing. Our members are also involved in service work and maintenance work. Service work could be minor repairs or leak calls if a roof is leaking, going out and finding the leak and repairing it. They're also involved with maintenance, preventative maintenance to help roofs last longer. So that's kind of what we call our roofing contractor members active members. That's kind of what they do in a nutshell. We have other categories of membership in our association. Associate members are manufacturers and suppliers to the industry. We have consultant members who are roofing consultants or engineering firms that specialize in roofing technology and the whole building envelope technology. We have affiliated contractor members and industry members. So there really is a place, anybody that's interested in roofing, there really is a place for them in our association.
So ultimately, you guys look at all of really kind of it's the roofing, it's the material, it's the quality and everything, which I think is, yeah, so that's kind of a nice segue back to sort of that discussion we had. And I remember being blown away during that discussion because I think, all too often now when we look at contractors, contractor associations, that kind of stuff. A lot of it is about generating revenue through membership. It's really trying to basically say, how big can we get? How far can we put our name in? That kind of stuff. And that is not the sense that I got from your association. The thing that I was really blown away by was really, the focus on the end product, making sure that the quality of that product outlasts really any sort of reputation or anything like that. It was a matter of really trying to provide the best quality product out there and making sure that the membership really kind of was held to the highest standard. So I'm wondering if you can walk me through. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that quality control, quality assurance side of things, and what role your association plays in that.
Absolutely. I often like to say that we're not your typical trade association. I think most trade associations, if you're a subcontractor and you want to join, you fill out an application, you cut a check, you pretty much have instant membership. I don't want to oversimplify their processes, but in many cases, that's how you join certain trade associations. Roofing contractors that want to become members of our association, we actually make them jump through several hoops before they can become a member. And it starts with a long list of qualifications just to apply. We insist that applicants, they must have been in business in the province of Ontario for a minimum of 5 years. They must do a certain amount of business. If you're a GTA contractor, for example, we expect that over the last 5 years prior to applying that they've done at least $5 million a year in roofing work. They must have a sheet metal shop as a part of their operation, because we think sheet metal is an intricate part of the roofing installation. So we want to make sure that they have control over both the fabrication and installation of the related sheet metal. And with their application, they have to provide us with quite a bit of documentation, actually, including financial statements, which don't come to us. They go to a third party, they go to an accountant firm. We ask for WSIB information. We used to ask for CAD 7 reports. Now it's the premium rate extended statements that the WSIB has in their new system. So we ask for copies of those. Insurance information, bonding information. And of course, and most important, the written health and safety policy. Occupational health and safety has been the driving force behind our association for as long as I can remember. And so the written health and safety policy is actually kind of first base in the application process for us. We actually send the written health and safety policy to the IHSA, the Infrastructure Health and Safety Association, and we ask them to review it, and we actually ask them to grade it, because to move on, let's call that first base, to move on to second base, you have to score at least 80% on your written health and safety policy. It's almost a zero tolerance thing, but that's first base. If they score less than 80%, the application process stops. If they succeed in the 80%, then we move on to the next step. And the next step actually involves bringing the contractor in for an orientation meeting where we'll sit down, talk about what the process is going to be all about, because it's somewhat complicated. Once we get through the orientation, it allows them to ask questions about the process as well, so that we're all on the same page going forward. The next step, really, after the orientation meeting, is we start getting involved with conducting inspections. So we will literally go out and inspect in-progress projects, and we're looking at workmanship, and we're looking at safety. And we hire third-party. We don't do the inspections ourselves. We hire third-party roofing consultants or engineering firms that specialize in workmanship inspections. And the same thing for safety. We conduct safety inspections, and we hire safety inspectors to go out and inspect the projects. We also look at a couple of completed projects, and we also visit their shop. We want to make sure that the contractor has a typical office shop yard situation. We don't want applicants that work out of their basement or their home garage or out of a pickup truck. We're looking for companies that operate.
These are not magnet businesses. Just slap something on the side and say you're an industrial roofer. These are established. Absolutely.
So that's the process, and when the process is finished, we created an inspection app for the inspection companies to use, and there's a separate app for workmanship, and there's a separate app for safety, and it allows the inspector to use this app right on the job site. So it allows them to answer questions. It allows them to put in comments about what they're observing, and it allows them to take photographs. And it's all so all the inspection reports that we get are all in the same format, and that's helped us greatly. And so once all those inspections are completed, our membership committee sits down and they review them, and then they make a judgment call based on all the documentation that's been provided, as well as the results of the inspections. And in a nutshell, I think that's kind of what our process is all about. Now that's the application process. I don't know how far you want me to go on this, but
so I'll stop you there for a second, because I find it interesting. So I've been doing a lot of work recently on pre-qualification systems and looking at sort of, Australia has there's a few different jurisdictions that have these pre-qualification systems. And typically there's something that the owner wants, right? It's something where basically a contractor has to pre-qualify before they can bid on any tender that's out there. And ideally, I mean, they're really set up around risk mitigation and trying to make sure that whoever you hire is, number one, qualified to do the work, but they're financially able to do it, but they're also cutting down the risk in terms of sort of the health and safety and the environment side of things, and really trying to get sort of this overall picture so that you're leveling the playing field. And it sounds to me like your application process mirrors that fairly well, but it's interesting to me that it's being done from an association level versus an owner level. And I'm just kind of wondering if you can touch a little bit on what the link between the association and potentially a project owner would be, and why you guys go to these lengths to make sure that your membership truly are qualified to be part of that association.
It's a good question. We spend a great deal of time promoting our association and our membership to those organizations or individuals that procure roofing services. So I could be talking about architects, engineers, building owners, government agencies, school boards, property managers, anybody that's involved in the procurement of roofing services. We want to sit down with them, and we want to talk to them about what we do in terms of how we screen our membership. And at the end of the day, we want them to use our members to do the work. And so it's not unusual to see contract documents come out, specifications that state specifically you must be a member of the OIRCA to qualify to bid this project. Now, it could be a specification. It could also be, as you were talking about pre-qualifications, it could be a part of a pre-qualification process where it says you must be a member. Or if it's a pre-qualification system where they're assigning points to certain things, they could say, well, if you're an OIRCA member, you're going to get, let's say, 20 points. So that fits into it well. So, when I'm out, or our business development person's out visiting school boards, property managers, if I'm sitting at a table with a school board, I'm going to tell them, we've got the best roofing contractors in Ontario. And they're going to say, well, yeah, I would expect you to say that. And so, well, hang on a sec. And then I talk to them about the application process. And it goes beyond that, because on an annual basis, we also audit our members, which is it's a two-part process. The part one's a paper audit, and then the part two is inspections. And in the paper section, the paper part of it, they have to provide us with up-to-date information, provide us with their up-to-date written health and safety policy, up-to-date insurance information, up-to-date WSIB information about training of their workforce, training of their management, all these sorts of things. Plus, we do some inspections. So it's not just a matter of getting into the associations. Once you're in, we're still monitoring the performance of our members from both a workmanship and safety inspection. So when I'm sitting down with that school board, as an example, these are the things I'm talking to them about, so that so that we can become one layer in that whole pre-qualification process for them. And this is particularly important in the re-roofing sector. I mean, while we call on architects and engineers and get involved in new construction projects, when you're dealing with re-roofing projects, you're quite often dealing directly with the owners, the building owners, or their representatives. And so we want them to, we want that to fit into that extra layer of the pre-qualification process. So it's, we, you know, you asked me the other reason why we do this. We believe that our association and our members are accountable to the building owner. The building owner is the one, they're the people at the end of the line. There's general contractors, there's consultants, there's architects, engineers, but the people at the end of the line are the roofing or the building owners.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel that we're accountable to them. And in fact, our mission statement uses that word accountable, and our mission statement is to assure through accountability excellence in roofing construction. So accountability is a big deal for us.
Something, it's one of these things that I love that you've picked up on that, because when I look at accountability in construction, that's one of the things that I think over time we've started to move further away from. It's just about sort of banging a product out and getting it out for public consumption kind of thing, and not enough thought put on the longevity of it, the lifespan, and that kind of thing. And I think that's really where we need to be focused as an industry, is saying, hey, listen, when we're hired on to do either, whether it's part of a project, a whole project, anything along those lines, it's a matter of being able to say, listen, this thing's going to last. It's going to stand the test of time, and you're not going to have a whole bunch of issues as time goes on. So I think that that's one of the things that I love about what you guys do, is this isn't just a checkbox exercise or a pencil whipping exercise. This is something where it's designed to really ensure that the quality of that product, the product that you guys are standing behind, or at least representing from an association standpoint, is really something that is of good value to that end user. It's something that is going to hold up to what you're doing.
Yeah, I sometimes think that the roofing industry has a bit of an image problem, and sometimes it's related to the shingling sector, because the shingling sector is very unregulated, and there are lots of issues in that sector. But I don't think a lot of people think about the roofs. You look at a building, you don't see the roof. It's up there, and you don't worry about it until it leaks. And and certainly we're not one of the glamorous trades like electrical and carpentry and plumbing, and roofing's always been considered kind of a dirty, filthy, back-breaking industry. But the reality is that roofing has become a very highly technical trade and industry, and because we're part of the building envelope, and the building science that revolves around the building envelope has changed dramatically in recent years. The whole environmental aspect of how we design buildings today, and the roof is a big part of that. And there's thermal resistance and airtightness of buildings, and these are important factors. So that we've seen roofing systems evolve dramatically over the last several years. And it's one of the reasons why we feel it's important to have manufacturers and suppliers as members and sitting on committees and boards, as well as consultants, the people that design roofs, because roofing has become a very complicated trade. And that gets reflected in training. We in the construction industry, I'm always impressed with the amount of training that goes on. And in the roofing industry, there are so many different types of systems now in the ICI sector, so many different manufacturers, and a lot of them offer long-term warranties. Mm-hmm. And so a contractor that wants to be able to install that product has to become an approved or authorized applicator for that manufacturer. And before they become authorized, they have to submit to send their workforce to be trained for that specific product. And there's so many variables and so many different types of systems that for the roofing contractor, it's a huge task to make sure that their workers are all trained and up to date.
So Don, you touched on sort of that product knowledge side of things. And I think that's really important. When we take a look at, worker training, and on this podcast, we've dealt with some of the training facilities, some of the union training facilities and that sort of stuff, and really making sure that people are job ready when they get out there. But it goes more, it goes further than really kind of that, you've got the skills to be able to do this sort of stuff, but it's that product knowledge, being able to assemble the system in the way that it was designed. And I like that you brought that up, because I think in a lot of cases, people think of some of these building systems as relatively simple, and they just aren't. anymore. It's not a matter of just kind of layering materials on one another. It's understanding kind of the chemical bonding processes. It's understanding really kind of how everything works together so that building envelope performs in a way that it will actually hold up for kind of that the amount of time that it was really designed for. And I like the fact that you guys sort of pick up on that and you look at that in terms of your association members and understanding that, yeah, it's not a matter of just being able to kind of put that roof on. It's understanding how that works as well.
And the demands on the building envelope are going to get greater as we move forward because we're experiencing climate change. And this is something that, we're taking a very close look at our association and through our national association, the Canadian Roofing Contractors Association, climate change and the impact that that's going to have on the performance of the building envelope and specifically with us roofing systems. We're talking about wind loads. I mean, it's windier. It's windier than it's ever been. And the wind loads on the structure, wind loads on the roofing system have changed in recent years. So climate change is kind of a hot topic right now in our sector, and it's we have to make sure that the roofing system. So the manufacturers certainly have to make sure that they're developing systems that are going to meet these challenges going forward, and we have to make sure that our roofing contractors are on top of how to install these new systems so that they're going to be able to perform for 20 plus years.
Absolutely. So one thing that I want to kind of take a look at, and I'd like to shift gears here for a minute because, when we take a look at association membership and that sort of stuff, it's one thing to get into it. It's one thing to perform during, kind of your membership within that association and making sure that obviously you're providing the best quality service to the end user or the end purchaser. But what happens if during one of your audits, you find that somebody's not holding up their end of the bargain? They're not installing things properly. They're cutting corners. Potentially there's just a higher number of warranty issues than maybe what you would deem to be acceptable. What happens? What role does the association play in that?
Well, excuse me, we are a self-policing organization. I mean, a lot of these manufacturers now have these long-term warranties, so they're intimately involved in all of these projects as well. Excuse me. But we are also a self-policing organization. If we receive a written complaint regarding one of our members, we'll get involved and we'll try and mediate a solution. Thankfully, we don't receive very many complaints, and when we do, I try to make it go away. I make a phone call to the owner. They're going to say, "Would you please make this go away? Because you don't want us investigating it." And generally, that's how it gets resolved. And quite frankly, roofing problems aren't always roofing problems. If you have a leak in a building, your first thought is, "Oh, it's got to be the roof," and it may not be the roof. And so sometimes we get involved and we find out that maybe it's an HVAC unit. And there was a wind-driven rain that day, and somehow the rain got into the HVAC unit and got into the building, and it's not a roofing problem. But we'll get involved and we'll try and mediate and make sure both parties, both the roofing contractor and the building owner or their representative, are looked after.
Absolutely. So now, do you ever get into a situation where, let's say you did have a contractor that honestly they're just letting their performance slide? Do you ever get rid of members, or how does that work?
Well, not my favorite subject, but we have terminated memberships in the past. Not very often, but it does happen occasionally, and it usually comes out of a complaint from a building owner or an architect or an engineer. And unfortunately, in this particular case, the contractor wasn't able to make the complaint go away for whatever reason, or the complaint was just too large to fix. And what we do in those circumstances is we don't terminate the member right off the bat. We probably put them on probation for 2 years, and they become a disciplined probationary member, which kind of means that they're not exactly a member in good standing. They're still members, but they're on probation. And while they're on probation, we're going to do what we do when someone applies for membership. We're going to be inspecting their projects, and they're going to be on a monthly basis. They're going to be providing us with a list of projects to inspect, and we're going to go out and inspect them over that 2-year period. And then if they if they check out over that 2-year period, that they're back in the fold and they become members in good standing. If during that 2-year probationary period there's another complaint, then they could potentially have their membership terminated.
So I can certainly appreciate that these are not comfortable topics to talk about, nobody's favorite side of things, because obviously, I mean, that's not what you're in business to do. You're in business to try and really kind of up that standard and that sort of stuff. But I do think it's one of those important topics to talk about, because it really does show to those project owners, to those building owners and that sort of stuff, that you're committed to the quality of the work that's actually performed,
Yes.
and making sure that those contractors are living up to their end of the bargain. And I think that gives, I know if I were a project owner or a building owner, that's the level of comfort that I want to see. Is I want to know that that association is basically saying, listen, it's not just so that they can put, OIRCA on the back of their truck or something along those lines. It's really kind of that, that symbol of high quality workmanship, and making sure that that is being followed up on. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, if we go back to sort of that application side, what ends up happening if somebody doesn't meet the grade? They want to be part of the association, but they're just not able to get there. How do you guys deal with that?
Well, if they don't check out, if after the membership committee reviews the inspection reports, they determine that the contractor hasn't made the grade in terms of workmanship and safety, they'll reject the application. Now, I'm glad you brought up that point, because we do have an appeal process. So if an applicant is rejected, there's an option for that contractor, that applicant, to apply for an appeal process, which means that they're going to come in, they're going to sit down with the membership committee, they're going to go through the inspection reports, they're going to look at the photographs, and the inspection reports, as we talked about earlier, are pretty detailed, and the photographs don't lie. But we do give the applicant an opportunity to come in and sit down and go through them with us, so that they have an understanding of why we rejected them. It gives them an opportunity to try and change the membership committee's decision, but it also gives the applicant an opportunity to see where they went wrong. And they will be allowed to reapply, but they won't be able to reapply for 2 years. So we want to give them time to go back and evaluate what happened during the process and make improvements within their company, so that their workmanship and safety is up to industry standards. And we sometimes get a bad rap that we're too difficult an organization to get into. And I don't know, asking a contractor to provide good workmanship and work safely, we don't think that that's too much to ask for, and that's really where we're going for. But I can tell you that 99% of the contractors that are rejected, they come back after 2 years, they reapply, and most often they get in.
Yeah. So I like that, going to both of our sort of combined health and safety experience and some of the discussions that we've been having around sort of that cultural change, and making sure that, hey, listen, you're not just doing something as window dressing, you're doing something because you genuinely believe in it. It's something that you're kind of putting your all into. Applies to this as well from a quality perspective. And, putting that 2-year limit, reapplication limit, I think is actually a pretty good thing, because it's not a matter of just saying, fine, we're going to check those boxes and we're going to do whatever just to get into the association. It's trying to actually look for that sustainable change, that systemic change that they've made within their business, that really kind of, transfers into that overall quality side of things, that overall risk mitigation, end of the business, which I think is a really important thing. I think too many people just kind of turn around, and it's, we become so focused on just checking boxes that we're not really looking at the overall intent behind this. And it's really to provide that high quality workmanship, and something where, you can stand behind that product for the warranty period, and hopefully well beyond. I mean, the goal is to get you to, get you the full life of the product.
Absolutely. I think our members are proud that they're OIRCA members, because they know what they went through to become a member, and they know that they're being watched, and they're proud of the fact that they can wave the OIRCA flag.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's, something I was fortunate enough to take part in your golf tournament recently, and you could certainly see that with your membership. There was definitely a pride behind the work that they did. And certainly even a sense of sort of camaraderie between the different companies that were out there in really understanding that, hey, you know what, you're in sort of the presence of people who all hold those same values in terms of how that business is run and really what that end goal is. And I enjoyed it for sure.
I've always, well, we were happy that you could join us on the links. It was a beautiful day. I've always been impressed with what you've just talked about, how the roofing contractors that volunteer to become involved in our association, whether it's on the board of directors or we have a variety of committees. We have a technical committee, occupational health and safety committee, risk management committee, membership committee, and the list goes on. And we never have problems finding contractors to volunteer, to sit at the table with each other. They come through the door of the office and they leave there, whether a big contractor or a small contract. They leave that all at the door. They sit down at the table for the betterment of the industry. And yeah, they get along. That surprises me a little bit because roofing's like every other trade. It's very competitive. And
Yep.
there are a lot of roofing contractors out there, but our members get along. I think they all have a lot of respect for each other. And I think too, when they see a specification come out that says you know must be a member of the ORC to qualify to bid this project, they don't mind bidding those projects because they know that their competitors are equal to them,
Yep.
and that means a lot to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So I talked a little bit about the pre-qualification work that we've been looking into, and I was, going back through past OCS reports and, looking at why certain contractors bid on things, but maybe not other jobs. And in a lot of cases, it comes down to, the fact that they know that there's going to be low ballers. They know that there's going to be people who come in who don't carry that same level of professionalism. And they kind of go, well, what's the point? Why am I going to spend the money? Why am I going to spend the time trying to bid on something when I know they're going to go with sort of that low bid pricing? Um, when they actually award the job. And the nice thing with this is if they are putting that tag saying it's got to be an OIRC, contractor that's got a bid on this, at the very least, they know that the bid they're putting in is against other members who are really kind of using the same materials, really understanding kind of how they're applied and the work that goes into it. So at the very least, their bid is going to be competitive against, somebody else's, which I think a lot of people lose sight of. It's kind of, we're really trying to take this industry and sort of shift them away from that low bid mentality and go more towards that quality bid, that responsible procurement side, and really understanding that, you're not comparing apples to apples when you're allowing some of that low bid stuff come in, that low ball, bid coming in. It's, you're getting people who may not know what they're doing. They're learning on the job. They're using substandard materials and that kind of stuff. So we're really trying to promote this side of things where it's understand what you're getting, pay for quality, make sure that you get the right people in place, because you're just going to end up with a far better product and you're going to have less headaches as time goes on. We're really trying to push that side of things.
100%. And I think the initiative at OCS is excellent that you're focusing on procurement.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that truly is the key. So Don, is there anything else that you want to tell us about the organization?
I it's funny you asked that question because it just came to me. I love telling the story about two of our members that a few years back re-roofed the Rogers Center in Toronto, and
That's got to be one heck of a job
it's
doing
it's
that building.
it's a huge project, and I recall that there were issues at Rogers Center with ice falling off the CN Tower, and that had been happening over the years, and it damages the membrane. And in one particular case, a big piece of ice actually went right through the roofing membrane, through the steel roof deck, excuse me, and ended up in the outfield. And I'm going to get to the gist of the story. So it took, because of the scheduling, they had to re-roof this building. And if anybody's familiar with the Rogers Center, they know what it looks like. Even on a July day, it would be a tough roof to re-roof. But this had to be done during the off season for baseball. So this means they were doing it through the wintertime. And because of the tight schedule, two of our members partnered to do the roof. One of those members was actually the contractor that installed the original roof on when it was called Sky Dome.
Yeah.
And they had partnered with another company when the building was originally built. And one of the workers that worked on the original Sky Dome building was the foreman for the re-roofing project. So that company had always serviced that building throughout its life over a 30-plus year span. But that foreman, and here's the interesting part of the story, guess who worked on the crew for that foreman? His son.
Yeah.
Worked on that crew. So that father who had
couple
installed
generations.
the original roof 30 years
Yeah.
later, he's the foreman on the project, and his son's on the crew. And it's such an interesting story, and it's a proud story that I like to talk about, because the logistics of re-roofing that building and the setup and the scaffolding and everything else was just a nightmare. And they did it during the wintertime, dealing with snow and ice. And it's just a little story that I'd like to end my discussion with.
Can you imagine the build up between the father and son as the father's telling the son about what he's about to walk into? Because I can't think of too many projects that are more challenging than that domed roof that moves. For any listeners, and I'm sure all the listeners are very familiar with what the Sky Dome or Rogers Center is now, but that's on a scale like none other. That is a different project altogether. So yeah, excellent. Well, Don, listen, I'd really like to thank you for coming on to the podcast. I know we've tried to have you on for a little bit. I really wanted to kind of round out some of the things that we're talking about from that contractor and association side of things. You know, we talk a lot about worker training, we talk about investment and training, we talk about health and safety, we talk about the labor relations side of things. But I really wanted to get sort of that perspective in terms of the quality and professionalism that the associations bring in, through their contractors and that kind of stuff. Because I think that's a really important part of the story. It's understanding kind of who you're getting and making sure that you're getting the best quality product out there. So with that, I mean, ultimately, part of the other reason that we were bringing you on was to reinforce some of the work that we're doing at the OCS around procurement, really trying to kind of change that narrative around the contractors. Not all contractors are created equal. And I think you tell a really compelling story as to, the quality of folks that are out there and really what they have to do to be able to perform at the level that the association expects them to. So, ultimately, we're trying to improve those practices right across the ICI sector, really in an effort to move projects and their owners away from that lowest bid methodology and towards evaluating every bid on specific criteria, really looking at that quality, but ultimately the risk mitigation side of things for those project owners. So, anybody listening to this podcast, I really hope that you do try to use some of this when you're trying to sell to those project owners as to why you are the contractor that needs to be there, because I think that this is such an important part of the story. So with that, I'd like to thank Don Marks and the Ontario Industrial Roofing Contractors Association for their time today on OCS Talks. For more information on today's podcast and resources from the Ontario Construction Secretariat, visit our website at iciconstruction.com and follow us on social media. Thank you.
Ontario Construction Secretariat. Knowledge to build on. Visit iciconstruction.com to learn more.